going to go to New York, generally speaking, and talk to Joe Cimino. Joe has been a friend of this program for a long time. He works in New York. He comes in contact with a lot of people in his line of work. I won't mention what it is, but he does a very important job, and he has a very good finger on the pulse of what's happening. Now, a lot of us realize that New York City has gone the way of San Francisco, L.A. It's imploding. It's collapsing in on itself with diversity. Diversity. Even that horrible communist creep Angela Merkel said diversity doesn't work. She finally admitted it. Too late. She's destroyed what was left of Germany. But Joe is there. He's watching, and we talk occasionally, and I always am very interested to hear in how things look from his perspective. Big city, big people, lots of different things happening. So in these very crazy times, Joe Cimino is back with us tonight. Hello, Joe. Thanks for being here. What's new?
Hi, Jeff. Good evening. How are you?
Yeah, I'm just watching it all, and I was just honestly wondering how it must seem to you. You have friends you go out with, I guess have lunch once a week, dinner, whatever. You meet with them. These are good American patriots, good people. And even for them, the changes that are underway, that are being propagated and perpetuated constantly upon us, are very difficult for some Americans to grasp. They don't want to let go of the way things used to be and face this horrific change we're being forced into. So tell me about your friends this time. We'll start out with that. Then I want to get to the general public. But what do your friends have to say about all this? They must look upon you as a little bit out there, because you're really targeting what needs to be targeted. You know what's happening. What do they think? How do you get along with your friends? Have you lost any friends? I hope not.
I haven't lost any, I would say, real friends, but the friends that I'm close with, they've come around to see exactly what I've been seeing and what you also promote on your program. I mean, there's a lot of eye-opening things that people in general, it's a shock to their, how can I put it? It's a shock to their psyche, I think, that these things are occurring. Even though it's right in front of them, I don't think what the major media is, if they listen to the major media, is really enlightening to them. Basically, they're like being told the very opposite, or being pushed. Like the programs here that we see on television and the radio, well, not the radio, but on the television, my friends talk to me about, and they're promoting it on the television here in New York City. I don't know about the rest of the country, but in New York City, you see this push towards trying to meld all the people into one ball, one race. By mixing everyone up, and they claim to the politicians here and the elite here want to promote diversity. That's what I wanted to say. They want to promote what they call diversity, yet they're the very ones who don't value that, because they want to amalgamate everyone, which wouldn't be diversity. And I had spoken that with my friends. My friends agree with that now. They see there is no real honoring of diversity, because you want to meld everybody together. You want everybody to mix. Forcefully so, it looks like, to brainwash people, I guess.
But see, that what they're doing, Joe, this is just a trick, because that's the antithesis of diversity when you make everyone the same. When you take these diverse and divergent groups and cultures and force them together and stir them up in this big vat of goo, and they do become similar, you got no more diversity. See, the lie is right there in front of us. It's pretty funny.
Well, my friends, the ones that are close to me now, we go out quite often. We go out a couple of times a week. On the weekends, we have breakfast. And my friends, the close friends, the 5 friends that we go out with, that I go out with, they see it now. I mean, they used to scoff at it before and laugh. They used to think that, come on, they used to tell me, Joe, come on, that doesn't make sense. I said, everything doesn't have to make sense. I always tell them this. Everything doesn't have to make sense to us, but it makes sense to someone who's doing these things.
There you go. Good line.
I mean,
Very good. Good line. Yeah.
So I said, the people that have the hidden agenda, they're not going to come out and tell you anything. They're not going to come out and tell you their plan. It's just like a organized crime group. Organized crime is not going to go out and tell you what they're going to do, what they're going to commit. And even when it's done and it's completed, you don't know the wheres, the ifs, the ands, the buts. You don't know everything. You don't know how it was done. And we don't know what's really going on. I mean, we can see the results, but I don't think we really know what is actually really going on, I tell them. And there's a line that I always tell them, too. It's to my friends. I say, listen, this is, to me, these politicians, for the most part, I'm not going to say all, but for the most part, that they're basically actors, I said to them. They're actors on a stage, and whether they're called Republican or Democrat or whatever their affiliation, they put on a show for us, I said, basically. They put the show on.
Yeah.
And then after the curtain goes down, they're shaking hands behind the scene and laughing at the audience, which is us. We fooled them again. That's what I always tell them.
Exactly.
Well, and this is what I see, and this is what they see now also. But I do have other people who are I might consider friends, but a little more maybe acquaintances. They think I'm out there, like you said. They think I'm crazy. They think I'm, not dealing with reality or whatever, because this is something they don't delve into it. I should say they don't delve into anything any deeper.
It's too much for them, Joe, and I don't fault people who aren't interested or can't assimilate it. It's too much. It's because we have to face and confront the gross reality that we're losing our way of life, our culture, our heritage, our history, everything. We're losing it. It's being taken away from us.
Yeah,
that's tough.
It's a jolt. It's an earthquake to the psyche, I should say. That's our term. It's an earthquake that you can't get your bearings sometimes when that kind of truth hits you. So it's hard for you to maintain any kind of equilibrium, I should say, in your mind, because your mind tends to want to believe what it's always believed. Anything that's a shock to that belief system, it takes a great amount of courage to really overcome that. It really does, because even myself, I've believed certain things for so long myself also. I'm not saying I wasn't there. I was there at one time. I basically, believe, but I'm a big reader. I've always read a lot, and I've always delved into things. I was a little more interested, and then gradually things would come to me. And this is how I gravitated to your program, years ago, when I've been listening to you for over 20 years, 20 plus years.
Wow. Well, you deserve
You
a
know.
medal for that. I don't know. how you've done it. That's a long time. We've gone through, and those of you listening who have been listening for that amount of time or longer, some, we have seen things, all of us, that I never expected to see. Not at this rate. And I think what happened was simple, and I've said it before. The international globalist, gangster, bankster elite, Illuminati, whatever label you want to hang on them, when they realized that they had been so successful with their mind control and mass social engineering that there was no appreciable pushback anymore. When they saw that they had the game in the bag, they just let it go. They didn't hold anything back. And they just, like you said, they laugh after the curtain comes down. They laugh.
Well, I had a little on a little lighter note, a little funny note. I had one of my friends who is a good friend of mine, but he doesn't really discuss these days. You know, when I tried to discuss it with him over the phone, he had gotten very leery. You know, he has been speaking about these things, and he would say over the phone, "I don't know this man. I don't know who he is." You know.
That's funny.
So he was trying to say, and I used to always tell him, I said, "That's okay, Chief. I know you don't want to talk." Throw it back on him, but you know, it's just funny. I think people are frightened too, Jeff. Besides that, I think they're frightened because I got that impression from my friend. They're frightened to know certain things, or maybe they're frightened that whoever they think is in charge is going to know that they might know something.
It's a creeping paranoia that's right there. A lot of people sense it, they feel it, and there's no way to talk people out of it. It's an instinctual sense of survival.
Yes.
There you go. All right, let me take you out, and you work again around in a profession where millions of people depend on what you do. Ultimately, what are you sensing? What do you see out there? Let me tell you something. When I was in the store the other day, and this 25-year-old, something like that, a woman, tall, thin, was on her phone, and she was in the checkout line. And so as she was approaching the checkout line, at least she was able to put her phone in an off mode and stick it in her back pocket. Well, she was waiting in line, and her things were being checked. And I guess the checker, another woman, was talking to her. And I was watching her body language, and it was clear that she wasn't real comfortable just talking to people. She was a little nervous. And what she kept doing with her right hand, it would move back to her right rear pocket where she had put her cell phone, and she would just touch it and then pull her hand away. She didn't take it out. She would just reach back there and touch it to see if it was still there. That's how neurotically dependent on that phone people are. When they get under stress, they reach for the phone. She wasn't going to talk to anybody, but it was a symbol, a sense that she was secure, and she had that phone. That was creepy. Then I moved up in line, and I'm in a different row, and there was a woman in front of me, I don't know, 40-ish, 35, 40, overweight, probably 210, 220, round, and the checker was also a female, and she said something to the woman, and she said something. And the customer, this overweight woman, said, "I am not a woman. I am a tranny." And the checker's, "Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry." And I mean, so those were my two experiences within 5 minutes. The utter addiction to smartphones and this morbid preoccupation with gender-bending stuff. Anyhow, tell me how it looks to you.
Well, over here, it's basically with the cell phone, if you want to You saw that one incident. I see that on a constant basis here. There's people walking around, especially women, young women too. They're on their cell phone, crossing the street in the dark, solitary places, or walking, looking at their phone like transfixed to their phone.
Wow.
And when I was going around, I picked up my friends. And sometimes we go take a little ride later on at night, maybe go sit in a cafe. If we have breakfast in the morning, we go out a little later at night. And we see these people, and we're talking to each other and say, can you believe that this woman is walking all alone in a deserted area, looking at her phone like there's nothing, she don't even know where she is. I said, it would be so easy for people to mug you, to rape you, to, attack you. And everyone else also, Jeff, if somebody did this, I tell my friends, you wouldn't even be able to, nobody would be able to identify the person. Everyone else is looking at their phones. So it's so many people. There's people who walk in the middle of the street, stand in the middle of the street. I've had it happen to me when I was working. Man was looking at his phone. He was dead center, smack in the middle of the street. The light turned green for me. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't even know where he was. He was actually dead smack looking at his phone. So you're right. There is a fixation.
I think it's even worse than that. It's beyond an addiction. It's beyond a lifestyle. It's actually become a visible component, a piece of the psyche of the entire person. That's how critical this is.
Well, I don't know if I'm correct, but I even see people looking at acting with the phone like it's like a substitute for everything else, a substitute for sex, a substitute for, intimacy with.
In other words, I see but how they're holding the phone changes, and they're expressing with their hand interaction with the phone different moods and sensations. Oh, okay, that works.
Yeah, I call it, I've seen a 2-year-old. Actually, they gave a 2-year-old the phone because she was on the train screaming her head off for the phone, and they finally gave her the phone. And I was saying to myself, that's the new pacifier now.
She was. And how old was this kid?
2 years old. 2-year-old kid.
Who's responsible for that? The parents. It's the parents' fault. They allowed this addiction to establish, to bloom, and now the kid is wrecked. So what happened when they gave the kid the phone? Kid show right up, right?
She immediately calmed down. Immediately. It's like a pacifier. I hate to say it, even I'm dependent with the rest of the guys I work with, my coworkers. We're all dependent on our phones also because this is how we keep in touch on the job. And it's, even them, when we go into report to work, a lot of guys, while they're waiting for their orders, they're on their phones, and looking at their phone. Me, I sometimes I'm on it, sometimes I'm not. I carry a book bag with me, so I like to read. I like to have a physical book in my hand, and I'm usually reading. But everyone else is really looking at their phone. But it really is it's
probably virtually everyone on the street, 90% will have a visible phone. Correct? Now you're in a big city. But it's yeah, and is it? Do you see people? And I'm sorry if I'm asking silly questions, but do you see people talking on the phone, or are they mostly just looking at it and working their thumbs at a blur, texting? It seems like people don't like to talk so much; they want to text.
Correct. I see that they're looking at their phone or texting, one or the other. They're very rarely do you see them talking. working on it, really. I mean, unless you catch them in a conversation, but probably 95% of the time they are just looking at their phone. Like I said, it's a real phenomenon, with this, because I just said to my friends not that long ago, I mean, how many long, maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, people really, we didn't have this. Now it seems like everyone
Right.
does this. It's like we're trained. You're trained to do this, and everyone does it now.
It didn't happen by accident. It's all been planned
Right.
out, and it's going exactly according to schedule. And it's happening, I think, so fast now that really it's a runaway situation. There's no way to rein it back in. What
I don't like it. I'm sorry.
Go on. No, you go ahead.
What I don't like, what I tell my friends is that if you do not have your phone, you're lost without it, because you can't even make a call on the street anymore. You used to be able to call from a payphone. No longer.
No more. No, I wouldn't know. I don't see payphones either. All right, very good. Hold on a minute, Joe, and we'll be right back. Joe Cimino from the Big Apple. Next. Okay, and we are back on this Thursday night talking with Joe Cimino in New York. Joe, when you talk to your friends, are they optimistic? What do they say? Where do they go with this whole train of thought? Where do they feel comfortable?
That's a very good question, because I find that hard to answer myself. I think they're basically resigned to a lot of these things now. With the attitude like, well, what can you do about it? That kind of.
See, that. Let me say something. That's understandable. It would actually be expected, but resignation is defeat.
Yes.
That's it. The fight's gone. And that was my point earlier. When the controllers, through all of their technological advances and analytical tools and everything else, realized that this probably was 20 years ago, but they knew it before we were demonstrating it, that there was no more real pushback. What can I do about it? This resignation, you might as well put the leg irons on. They're taking it all. The majority of Americans, the story I put up today, I'm going to paraphrase this, are now in favor of governmental controls and restrictions on what the media, the entertainment, and what the public can say. That's the end. That's the end. I'm sorry, that's the end of the First Amendment. Think about it. That's the majority of Americans. I'll find the story here. That's not good. That's not that means we're going to get what we're deserving, I guess.
But getting back to to the cell phone with my friends, I just wanted to make a point to that. I told my friends, the cell phone is also how many maybe blessings that maybe you've had from it, but there's ultimately a lot of curses from it too, because I believe that also the cell phone destroyed real intimacy between people, because
sure it did.
You don't have to really talk to people anymore. There's people. It's a loner's dream. I call it a loner's dream, because they can sit there and make love to their phone all day long, and be with their phone. And that's what they are. If you're a loner, don't want to interact with people, you're able to entertain yourself all day by yourself, without any human input, or emotion. That's why I don't like texting. I told one of my friends this a while back, because I had a little bit of an argument with him because he wouldn't answer the phone. He would always text. And then when I finally got him, and I was in person with him, I said, "What are you always texting for? You never pick up your phone." And he said, "Well, he told me a real dumb answer, which was, it helps me to spell." I said, "It helps you to spell. It helps you not to spell. People don't write words out on there anymore.
No, and they have software that corrects everything anyway."
Yeah, I told him. I said, that's no excuse. I said, you're avoiding actually talking with people. And I said, it's not good. It's not good. You can't. There's other skills, Jeff. There might be people who are intelligent, like I told him, with engineering or physical things. But when it comes to human contact, there's a lot to be said for that. There's a lot of interaction that you can't get from a phone that you can get from a person. The sound of their voice, their intonations, their look, their body language. There's a lot to be learned from that. And I don't see people learning anymore from each other. That's what I was getting at ultimately too, because kids don't have to do anything anymore either. They can be on their phone too. They're not. I don't see any kids around here playing anymore, except we're at the park where I live. It's pretty well used, but you don't see kids on the street anymore playing. They don't play stickball here. We used to play with a game called stickball. I don't know if you heard of it, but
yeah, sure.
They played soup ball and all kinds of, New York City games, and kids interact with one another. You don't really see that here too much. I don't see that anymore because it's not a European culture.
Right. Well,
not a European culture here.
That's it for sure. It used to be that Europeans came here and mixed in and melded in, and you all played stickball together no matter what your heritage. More than half, this is a very sad headline. More than half of Americans want government-imposed press restrictions and curbs on free speech. More than half of Americans. Now, this could be a bogus survey. I don't trust them. But it's saying that the majority now want restrictions on the First Amendment. Let me read a little bit more. Some Americans are having second thoughts about the First Amendment. This according to a new survey. Over half are calling for the First Amendment to be rewritten, and some 61% believe there should be limits on free speech. This could all be a lie. It could all be contrived just to make people start to believe that that's the general sense of things. Here's a little more. The First Amendment, which guarantees Americans freedom of speech, should be overhauled to reflect current cultural norms, according to 51% of the respondents to a survey published Wednesday by the Campaign for Free Speech. The campaign is hoping to call attention to the dire state of Americans' preeminent civil right with the poll, which breaks down opposition along gender, race, class, and educational lines. This is not good. It should be 10% at the most would want the First Amendment messed with. And here we have allegedly over half. This is not good.
I tend to believe what you just said before, that it's a little bit of a skewed and bogus thing. I tend.
Well, this is how they do it, Joe. They start putting out phony polls, and pretty soon people begin to believe them. Well, if other people want freedom of speech restricted, I guess I should. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I tend not to believe that because, well, like I said, among my friends, and even the guys who disagree with me, they wouldn't agree with that. But I always tell my friends also, because I like a lot of quotes from history and from famous people, and I always said this to them too, and I said it to my fam. Benjamin Franklin always said, "There's no such thing as public opinion, only published opinion," and that's one of the best lines I've ever heard. And it really is. I believe that's the truth. Because they could take a survey of us, meaning my friends and I, when I was speaking to them, and they say 100 people could be here, and 95 people could be in favor of something that's for us, and they'll publish the 5 people who are against it. And so the 5 people that are published and put in the paper seem like the majority. So it's very easy to do for them when you control the media.
Of course.
You know.
Here's another one. Majority of Americans want First Amendment rewritten. 51% of millennials want fines or jail time for what they call hate speech. That's without question one of the most subjective things I've ever considered. What is hate speech? Who's going to define it?
Exactly.
Well, we know.
Exactly. Who is going to define it? Who's going to hold them? Who is the ones who are defining it? Who's going to hold them accountable? Because they'll always be shifting the ground underneath your feet, because you all know it might be hate speech today, and tomorrow won't be hate speech, or it will be considered good today, and tomorrow will be something else. You'll never know what's correct.
Right. Well, the Constitution is as close to a timeless document as we're ever going to see. It's the only one like it in the world. It's a magnificent document. And the idea, the concept of freedom of speech is you either have it or you don't. You don't begin to change it and have partial freedom of speech. You don't. Once you lose some of it, you might as well say, well, we don't have it anymore. More than 60% of Americans agree on restricting speech in some way, with that majority of 51% wanting to see the First Amendment rewritten to, quote, reflect the cultural norms of today. What about tomorrow, as Joe just said? We cannot have a constitutional convention. We cannot allow any of these amendments to be in any way changed, curtailed, or imposed upon. The findings are frankly extraordinary, said Executive Director Bob Lystad in his address to the Washington Free Beacon. This is a newspaper. Our free speech rights and our free speech rights have evolved over 200 years, and people now seem to be rethinking them. What's going on here? Hate speech. What is hate speech, Joe? What is it? You ask 10 people, you get 10 different definitions. That's what you get.
Exactly. And especially amongst the so-called diverse amount of people that are here, who come from different cultures, who everyone else has a different view of what they consider good or bad. They're not Americanized. They're not have the American mindset, and that's what I believe that these politicians have been doing all this while. It's like the frog in the pot, you know, when you boil them. They're getting everyone acclimated to this. It's a form of, I told my friend, indoctrination. It's not education no more, Jeff. They're not educating anyone anymore.
No, they're programming them. Sure.
They're programming them and indoctrinating them. And I see it as this Marxist Bolshevik, what they ever did to Russia before just before the revolution and after the revolution, and what they tried to do in Germany.
Correct. They tried to do the same thing in Germany in the 20s. Exactly. Same thing.
It's basically, and what they do, I think they do, especially with the millennials. The millennials, in my view, I mean, I see them as, I don't know the exact word for it, being effeminate, or gravitating towards the woman's type of thinking. I don't mean it to be insulting to women, but they're more an emotional reaction to things, not analytical. They're not analytical.
Right.
They're reactionary to any emotion, because they're being used to taking care of by other people. I mean, we had that discussion too, my friends, and I just recently, about a lot of people here. They're complaining about the millennials. They don't want to go to work. They're in their 30s. They're in their 40s. and they're still considered as kids. They never want to develop above that, that kid mentality, and they stay in that realm where they have no responsibility, but yet they have input into what you're saying now, like, oh, well, this isn't right, that's not right. The other thing, they don't have any moral compass. Or at least their compass is not the one we had all these years.
No, they don't. They're told not to have any restrictions, no boundaries. And this goes back to that 60s and 60s thing. If it feels good, do it. Remember, if it feels right, it's okay. Well, that's been taken now to a new extreme. I don't see accountability. I don't see discipline being talked about as a good thing anymore. No, it's all being torn down. I'm not saying I have the answers. I'm just saying this is what I see. And I talk to people like Joe occasionally to find out what they're seeing. And when you tell me your friends are resigned to this, that's not encouraging. And I'm sure it's the same over much of the country. People get to the point when they wake up and they realize that it really is too late to do anything about it. We have a government that is nothing less than it's an ongoing, rolling criminal syndicate. Criminal syndicate. It's a crime organization. Quite organized and quite criminal. So yeah, it's too bad. I don't know. These young people coming up have no idea of what it was like for us when we grew up. So to them, it's some abstract, weird concept, the culture that we had, which they have no way to relate to and never will. So this is their reality. It's not a big mystery. This is just what they know. And it's all been tailored so that when they grow up into this reality, they're completely conditioned to it, and they'll do what they're told, and they're so easily manipulated now. Anyhow. Go ahead, Joe. I don't mean to talk so much.
Well, I was just going to correct it a little bit. My friends aren't, all of them are not resigned, but I would say maybe half of them are. There's a few of them still, that say that's why we have to do this, we have to do that, we have to vote, we have to make more affiliations with other people, and of like-mindedness. They want to develop get in touch with other groups and things like this.
Absolutely, you bet.
We've spoken about this because, like I told you, Jeff, we go out to eat. So we were out having breakfast. A lot of times, we're sometimes pretty vocal, and people hear us. Some people come over, they're interested, they talk with us too. They get in on the conversation, and believe it or not, some of them are millennials too. This is like sometimes in the part of Williamsburg. Sometimes we go over to Williamsburg, Brooklyn, which is not too far away from here. It's a few miles, 3-4 miles away, and it's very the hipsters. They call them the hipsters now, etc. And they're all over the place over there. It's very very up-and-coming neighborhoods. They're all out, they're all socializing, and they've heard us speak, and they joined in the conversation. And, I don't know how deep this goes with the millennials, in terms of their politics. I don't know how deep it is in them. I tend not to believe it's that strong, because they're used to being taken. I don't mean no insult to them, but they're used to being taken care of. I mean, I have a friend, the son's 34 years old, still don't want to work. I want to get a job, but she was paying for his rent, and
wow.
And she's angry with him, but she realized that, she contributed to that, and also she was a single mom, and her parents also doted on him, they tend to play the sympathy card here. Jeff, that's what I think works with the elite people, because they hold out their hand.
Well, it's a victim culture. I understand.
Yes,
you're right.
Yes, they hold out their hands to them, and people sometimes, they say they don't want to be pitied, but they are being pitied, and they have a pity party, and those people accommodate them, and it feels good. So the people feel sorry for you, and it's not your fault no more. It's like you said, it's no accountability, no responsibility anymore to yourself or anyone else, or to society at large. I see that, especially here in New York. I mean, you got a lot of things going on here, Jeff. A lot of things that are not being said. You have a lot of things going on that are not being put in the paper. Mm-hmm. I mean, only something when sensationalized happens. Like I don't know if you heard of the story here with one of the gangs here mistakenly killed another 16-year-old on the street. He ran into the store to get protection and help, and then the gang basically took him outside and butchered him. And this was a big thing. Yeah. Big thing in New York, and yet, this is what's going on under this mayor, which I say it's a joke to call him a mayor. I really like to call him the mayor. But most of the people here cannot stand that man. I don't even know how he got elected, but I think he got elected because nobody came out to vote.
Bloomberg is one who's going to run, and then you got your de Blasio. I don't know. New York has produced some real winners, huh?
He's probably, everybody's talking about him. He's up there with Dinkins as the top worst mayor of all time. So, it's a shame what he promotes too. He promotes a lot of this here too. It's a disrespect to the police here too. That's why the city it's gradually becoming rapidly becoming now. It's becoming a city of rich and a city of poor. That's what it's becoming, Jeff. A lot of people are moving. A lot of the white European people are moving out of New York now. And myself, I'm thinking of doing that myself. My
when
family.
You think about that, where do you think about going? What's the option here? Where do you go?
Well, I have friends that moved from my job and other places that live now. They live in the South in North Carolina and other areas down south. But I heard it was very nice down there. But you don't know why. You hate to run. You hate to feel like you're abandoning your...
Well, this is happening all over the country. People are realizing they're cornered, and they're being surrounded by a lifestyle and people that they don't feel anything in common with, and they want space. And it's quite understandable, and it's going to become more prolific. Right. Think about this First Amendment. If the 60-some percent, then 51%, they want to rewrite it, they want to change it, you can't touch it.